Now, I've read that the FDA said we're going to set a minimum. It has to be at least 50% effective to meet the minimum set by the FDA, but they were expecting something more like 60 or 70%. Just how amazing is it that they got to 90% on one of the first vaccines to be at this point in trials?
Oh, this is a huge success, not just for vaccines in general, which it certainly is, but also because this is a new vaccine technology. Most vaccines, they use some kind of either a killed virus or they use some kind of antigen or protein that the virus produces. What this vaccine does is it's an mRNA vaccine, so it sort of it inserts a scantron of sorts into the body, and then the cells of your body take the scantrons, run it through the machine, and start producing its own antigens. So it's a much more efficient way of producing a vaccine, and it's a very efficient way of delivering the vaccine. And they're able to ramp up production much faster. And so that's one of the reasons why Pfizer is ahead of the pack now, even though they had kind of a late start. And the fact that this vaccine is working so well bodes well, not just for COVID-19, but for future pandemics as well.
Now, if we get something that's 90% effective, does that also change the number of what we have to have herd immunity? Because from the beginning, Doc, with the what they call it an R naught, the transmissibility of this, measles, for example, has an R naught of like 18 or something scary like that. I get it, I might give it to 18 other people in an unvaccinated environment. In this case, if we're getting 90% effectiveness from the vaccine, does that mean that when we had talked about wanting to get to, say, 60% vaccination to get herd immunity, does that number change at all if we have a 90% effective vaccine?
No. Usually when we were talking about herd immunity, what we're talking about is the number of people who need to be immune. So if you're saying 60% vaccination to achieve 60% herd immunity, that's assuming that the vaccine is 90% or this 100% effective. So being that it's almost 100% effective, then that means we're closer to only needing about 60% vaccination rates in the community to achieve herd immunity. But no, those two numbers aren't really related.
Well,
if we
went the other way, Doc, if we went the other way, say, since the FDA set the minimum at 50% effectiveness, if you had a vaccine that was only effective on 51% of the people who got it, you'd have to have a higher number of people vaccinated to keep people safe with herd immunity, wouldn't you?
Exactly. You'd have to have at least twice as many people vaccinated as you would normally be required to have.
Okay, so this is a huge development. If I'd asked you back in January and February when they launched Operation Warp Speed out of the Trump White House, said we're going to come up with a vaccine, would you have guessed that we'd be at this point with a vaccine this early? Not even a year has gone by?
No. In fact, I would have bet money that it would not be so fast. I thought that by the end of this year, getting through to phase 3 would be relatively realistic, and then we'd have a vaccine sometime in the middle of next year. But the fact that they have one before even winter of this year, I'm frankly floored that they've been moving so fast. And as I keep saying, they haven't cut the safety precautions at all. They've only cut out the bureaucratic logistical slack.
But that makes a difference in how fast you get to it. So now, how fast do you think we can get, assuming that this one's good to go and the FDA signs off, maybe by the end of this month, how long do you think it'll take before we get to, to some reasonable number of people vaccinated in a country this big? So that's both producing the vaccine, distributing it, and getting it to the people who are willing to take it. What are we looking at?
We'll probably start getting people vaccinated, assuming everything goes to plan. And this still could. There's about two more weeks left, and this thing can get derailed possibly. But we're probably going to start getting vaccinations in the people who need it the most. That is, healthcare workers and the elderly. Those people who need it most probably going to start getting it by the end of this year. But vaccinating them in earnest is probably going to begin like Q1 of next year. And the broader population probably around springtime of next year, and then we'll have a pretty broad portion of the population vaccinated probably by late summer of next year, I think.
Late summer. Dr. Pham, one of the other issues is people who don't want to take the vaccine. are we likely, based on past experience, to see any kind of, what are the typical problems that crop up? You know, it's one thing to test it on thousands of people, but when you start giving it out to literally millions of people, what are the kinds of downsides you could have to a vaccine? I mean, there have been some bad examples of that, haven't there, in the past?
There have been, but they've been monitoring all the people who have been participating since the phase 1 trials. And these vaccine candidates that have not been halted the way AstraZeneca has, they haven't had the kind of major adverse reactions that would crop up. Now, that having been said, we have less than a year's worth of data on this, and so something could potentially crop up. But being that we've had tens of thousands, we're at 32,000 people who have received both doses of the vaccine. And they haven't developed any major adverse reactions yet. I think we have a really good rate of safety so far. But I can't say that this is good to go for everyone involved, because there's going to be a lot more people going down the line.